My research was inspired because I live in Queenstown, New Zealand, in a share house. It's just turned to spring, but in winter it was pretty cold. We have a fireplace and a heat pump, which is New Zealand slang for aircon. And as you can imagine, the power bills are pretty steep. It's an old rental house, we don't have a fancy heating system, and we don't have a lot of disposable income. So I wanted to know, how can we use our heat pump most efficiently and economically? Could we regulate our heat pump based solely on the room's temperature, or would we need more? I hypothesised that if I were to record the temperature of our living and dining room and also note when there is any activity in the house, i.e. is anyone actually home, I would find that for the majority of the time that the room was at an uncomfortable temperature, that no one was actually there to be uncomfortable, thus negating the need for regulation. And it turns out I was right. Setting my uncomfortable temperature as anything below 20 degrees, because I am a lizard, and detecting for motion, only 25% of the time that the room was under 20 was anyone actually home or awake. A sample of the data collected is shown here. Let me zoom in for you. So blue, no one's home and the temperature is sitting around 16 degrees. The first red point here is when someone arrives home and they've either put on the heat pump or they've started the fire, and it takes about 2 hours for the temperature to reach 20 degrees. So if the heat pump were regulated by temperature alone, not only would the heat pump would only the heat pump have been running for these 2 hours, but it would have also been running for the previous 3+ hours. And this seems incredibly inefficient to me. So in setting up my experiment, I used an infrared motion detector here, and I used a temperature sensor attached to an Arduino board, and it was sitting on a shelf in my living room. So here you can see on the floor plan, this big open space, we've got the heat pump here, the sensor on a shelf, and a fireplace. So it's detecting motion in this whole range. I sampled the temperature once every 5 minutes, and I recorded if any motion was detected in those 5 minutes. The data was saved to a CSV file, and I analysed the data and performed calculations in Excel, but then visualised the data as scatter plots in Tableau. Of course, I gained permission from my housemates, but the data still needs to be kept securely stored as it contains information regarding the occupants' movements, and it also puts the occupants and their belongings at risk of theft. I found it quite difficult to get the sensor to sample the motion every second, but then only record the activity once every 5 minutes. I ended up initialising a Boolean value as false, which was then flipped to true if any motion at all was detected. So, it turns out that a smart heat pump, regulated by temperature alone, is just not that smart. Add one motion sensor and you're on your way to saving some dollars. To actually make such an intelligent AC, one would just need an infrared receiver and some simple code to decode the heater's remote. There could be then a few options for remotely controlling the heater based on the data as it gets collected and analysed. As simple as in this experiment when the temperature is below 20 and there's motion detected. However, considering the majority of the uncomfortable temperature were recorded outside regular waking hours, between 6 a.m. and 11 p.m, it would be smart to regulate the heat pump only during waking hours. A further experiment could investigate the time it takes for the room to reach 20 degrees once motion has been detected, and then set this as the automatic duration for the heat pump to operate as soon as motion is detected in the room. So that was my study. I hope you enjoyed and I hope you learned something.